And there's this quote from Ruth Harrison in the book Animal Machines, which I think is very fitting. If one person is unkind to an animal, it's considered to be cruelty. But where a lot of people are unkind to animals, especially in the name of commerce, the cruelty is condoned. And once large sums of money are at stake, will be defended to the last by otherwise intelligent people. So that's kind of the reality, and has been the reality. Thankfully, as people learn about this, I think change is happening. But still today, in the US, roughly 10 billion farm animals are raised and slaughtered every year. The vast majority of those are the chickens that are raised for meat. Remember how I mentioned there are two distinct types of chickens, the egg-laying birds and the meat-type birds. There's about 300 million egg-laying hens in the US. When it comes to the numbers of the meat-type birds, every year there's about 9.5 billion meat-type birds that are hatched in the US who get into our food supply. So of the 10 billion farm animals exploited, the vast majority are these meat-type chickens. And as I said, they grow twice as big and twice as fast as normal. They grow so big and so fast that their hearts and lungs have a hard time supporting that growth rate, and every year millions die of heart attacks before reaching the slaughterhouse. And they go to the slaughter at just six weeks old. So these are young chicks that are dying at young ages of heart attacks. And their fast growth and their overweight condition somewhat perversely parallels our own overweight problems in the US. You know, obesity is now being recognized as an epidemic. And I have a series of slides here from the Centers for Disease Control to make that point. This is from 1985, and you see the darker blue states indicate 10 to 14% of the adult population is considered to be obese. By 1990, we see the problem spreading. By 1995, we now need a new category because the problem is becoming worse. By 2000, we need another new category, and the problem continues spreading across our country. And here in 2006, the last slide I have available, we see the problem continues getting worse. So what we do to other animals also affects us. How we treat other animals has impacts on our own well-being, physically, but also, I would say, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and in every way. What we do to other animals is a reflection of who we are. You know, Mahatma Gandhi said you can judge the moral progress of a nation by its treatment of animals. And the more I do this work, the more I really understand that. Animals are so dependent on us at this time in terms of the way we've domesticated farm animals particularly. And if we treat them with cruelty, that says something about us. And sadly, it's been the norm for a long time. And most citizens don't know about it. So that's what gives me hope. When people know what is happening and people decide to live in a way that is consistent with their own values and their own interests, I think change is inevitable. Because most people don't think it's okay to treat living animals like manure. Most people don't think it's okay to put animals in cages where they can't move and leave them there for their whole lives. Most people oppose common farming practices. But most people are unwittingly supporting these practices by buying these products. So we encourage people to live in a way that's consistent with their own values. And I think when that starts happening, we're going to see big changes because these systems are not supported by most people. And when people start living in a way consistent with their own interests, we will also see change. Because right now, people are eating in a way that is literally killing themselves. I mean, it's tragic, you know, the kind of obesity we see in this country. You know, the current generation of children is the first in US history that's expected to have a shorter life expectancy than their parents. And it's because of lifestyle and diet. The three leading causes of death in this country, well, two of the three leading causes of death can be addressed with diet. And those are heart disease and cancer. So again, this is what we do to other animals has serious consequences for our own health and for our own attitudes. One of the first visitors to our farm in Watkins Glen, New York, was a pig farmer. And he went into our pig barn and he saw a couple of young interns, you know, young women maybe 20 years old, and in their 20s, weighed maybe 100 pounds each, cleaning up around 500-pound pigs. And this pig farmer was shocked. He said, that's a dangerous situation. Those are violent, aggressive animals. You better get those people out of that barn because they will be attacked. And I was kind of surprised that he said this, and I said that, you know, we have been doing this for years and we've never really had a problem like you're describing. And he said, listen to me, I'm a pig farmer, I've raised pigs for years, they're violent animals, and you can't trust them. And he went on to tell a story about how he had this sow once, and he took her piglets away, and she came after him. She went through a 4x4 like it was a toothpick, he said. And he didn't recognize that his action caused her reaction. It's so ironic that farmers who raise animals by the thousands don't really understand these animals. When we bring animals to farm sanctuary, oftentimes they're victims of abuse, and they are afraid of people. But we need to give them their space. And over time, they generally learn to trust us. And this is a picture of, you know, Nikki, a pig that we rescued from the floods in Iowa that happened a couple years ago. And some factory farms opened their barn doors and let the animals out. Some didn't, and the animals died in their crates and drowned, unable to even run for their lives. But thankfully, Nikki was a pig who was able to make a run for it. She actually gave birth on a levee, and those are her piglets. Contrary to what that one pig farmer was saying about how these pigs are mean, violent animals, Nikki is a very good mother, and she knows that she can trust our people to be good to her babies. And so she's not attacking us like that pig farmer was describing. And you know, pigs and other animals show emotions. These guys are actually smiling if you look at their faces. These are happy pigs. And like all animals, farm animals want to live and enjoy life. They want to avoid pain and suffering, want to avoid fear. They want to be with their friends. But you know, unfortunately, in the industry, these animals are seen just as commodities. And I think farmers have lost touch with who these animals are, and in some way have lost touch with the land and with their own sort of hearts. When we worked on the initiative campaign back in Florida, back in 2000 to 2002, I went to the University of Florida and I talked to the manager of the swine unit there. And when I first walked into his office, he said, "What, do you want to put my people out of business?" And my response was, "We just want to prevent suffering." And we, you know, talked for a couple of hours. And, you know, he came up with all the same old arguments about how, you know, these pigs are mean, aggressive animals. If you don't put them in the crates, they're going to attack you, so you have to put them in the crates. And I said, well, that's not really the case. We take care of pigs. We give them good, you know, take good care of them. And we've never had the problem that you're describing. He also reiterated an industry assumption that you have to get big or you go out of business. Small farmers can't make it today. And I said, well, that's not necessarily the case. I studied agricultural economics at Cornell University, and there's opportunities for small farmers who want to do things in a different way. So we went back and forth for a while, and it was mostly combative. But towards the end of the conversation, he said, you know, as I was getting ready to leave, he looked up at me and said, "You know what's missing on the farm today? Pigmanship. You know, an understanding of the animals." And I was kind of surprised by that. And I guess that perhaps this guy had grown up as a child on a farm and had a certain affinity for animals, pigs in particular, and he wanted to work with them and wanted to be around them. But then he went to the university and he was taught certain common farming practices, such as cutting off, you know, tails of pigs or notching their ears or mutilating them and doing these mean things to animals and being told that you're supposed to do it and going along with it. But for that moment, that afternoon, he said, you know what's missing? Pigmanship. And maybe he was getting back to his childhood recognition and understanding of these animals. And the last thing he said to me before I left was, you know what everybody should see? Is a sow build a nest. And that's a picture of one of the pigs at our farm. I was very happy for that exchange, and I wrote about it in the book. And I was back down at the University of Florida this last year doing this book tour. One of his students was actually in the class. And I said, well, did he like what I wrote about him? And she said, not really. I said, well, you know, a lot of people in the industry, people like Temple Grandin and you know, vice presidents from the National Pork Producers Council and some of these sort of high-ranking officials in the meat industry thought that that was an important point, that farmers have lost an understanding of the animals. So I made that point to her, and hopefully she relayed it back to him, and maybe he will feel proud to have spoken out against the common way things are done. But in that industry, as in many industries, people are pressured to go along and to do things that they probably don't want to do and probably don't feel very good. You know, most people don't like to see animals suffer. You know, could you imagine what it would be like to work in a slaughterhouse where for 8 hours a day all you're doing is cutting the throats of animals? And that would be a brutal, bloody, violent job. And it's one that I really wish nobody had to do.